Kirby found a couple of conspicuously placed nuggies on the ground and inhaled without a second thought. Little did he know, they were cursed by King Dedede, and Kirby lost the ability to float. The rules are that I cannot float at any point in time. I can, however, use different copy abilities that help me to gain some distance. And with that out of the way, let's hop right into it. Is it possible to beat Kirby 64 without floating? On the peaceful planet Popstar, Kirby takes a nice stroll wreaking havoc and destroying the lives of the innocents on this beautiful sunny day. I have a plethora of enemies at my disposal in which I can use to help me fly temporarily without me floating. The first level is Cakewalk, as there are literally no pits for me to fall into. I do a bit of platforming action here and there, and this is where I obtain the extremely important copy ability combo. The Fire and Bomb. This creates fireworks which allows me to gain horizontal distance and otherwise impossible to cross gaps. We meet Waddle Dee, who transforms into Waddle Doo and demolish them as he gets crushed. Onwards we trek into the peaceful, quiet forest, where we disrupt the peace with loud and bolstering fireworks. As you can see, there are no pits yet, so no floating wouldn't be a problem. That is until we ascend to the top of this giant hollow tree and make our way onto Waddle Dee's impressive homemade lift. We are forced to Brightus to progress. Unfortunately, we encounter our first impossible crystal shard, as it is impossible to grab it and make it back safely. We dump our sorrows by diving headfirst into the tiny hole and thrash upon this giant pink tutu spring. Next up, we meet our seemingly only human friend Adeline, who's got possessed by dark matter and is summoning little drawings that are no match for our amazing fire. After she came to her senses, we march right onto Castle DVD and mask in the magnificent infrastructure. Kirby inspects the red carpets and checkered flooring ablaze as he admires the golden chandeliers and giant rails. We ascend the spiraling staircase with a giant fountain in the middle until we encounter His Majesty himself. Fortunately for us, this battle was pathetic and it took like 5 seconds. We meet the first official boss of the game, Wispy Woods, who we fight for no apparent reason. He throws his unnamed children to fight us, and gets upset even though he doesn't remember where they came from. We easily knock down the Mad Lad, and off we go to the next planet. Onwards to the parched land of sand, where the water Niles are nowhere to be seen for a mile. Kirby continues to heat up the already scorching environment with blazing fireworks, destroying absolutely everything in his path. We meet the Thwomp Cyclops, and do a little bit of platforming action here and there. Then we enter the room filled with pouring sand, which was a bit tricky without floating, but it was very manageable. We escaped the Room of Doom, and alas, we found a tiny portion of water on the mountaintop oasis. However, Kirby ignores the water to escape the blistering heat as fast as he could while being on fire due to the fireworks. We take a much needed break from the blistering heat and enter the mysterious abandoned fields with terrifying, toppling pillars that are insta-kill. You can tell that the difficulty has ramped up just a bit. I like how they progressively made the game just a little bit more difficult, but not too overwhelming. We navigate through the semi-labyrinthian maze of stone to get a shiny crystal shard and make our way up into the darkened cave of platforming. This section was a little bit difficult because I had to rely on my fireworks to get up on the ledge at the end of this room. Then we blaze across the field of Shatzos and into the room where only King Dedede is able to overcome. Next we fall face first into the cave of wondrous purple sand. Our fireworks ability is basically a necessity to even overcome the trial of this level, as we need to gain vertical distance to even get past this giant skeleton. I really love the aesthetic of this level, with the pouring sands and little sandy whirlpool. We descend deeper and deeper into the cave as we gracefully defeat every enemy we come across. We return to the Land of Sand, but we get to go inside Ramiel from Neon Genesis Evangelion, which by the way looks insanely cool. We then have our ears blessed by one of the best Kirby soundtracks in the game. While jamming out, we dodge the incoming missiles from the shot cells as we ascend to the top. We then carefully platform on top of these yellow and red cheese blocks without floating. I had to carefully time my fireworks just to get on top. We then zip right past the dark room with the shapes because who has time for that? Then we enter the room with arbitrary floating cubes spinning in place as we climb up the elevator lifts leading us to the top. This felt a little scary considering I can't get back up once I fall and lose a life. We then defeat Mini Ramiel and get the shard, which is pretty much useless to us. I quickly snatch the ice cream bar and finally complete the level. We face off against the second boss of the game. These guys were much harder than Wispy Woods, and the difficulty meter ramped up. This is due to the fact that I must inhale and spit out the colors associated with the respective colored diamonds. Unfortunately, this means that we must part ways with our beloved fireworks ability. Trying to navigate between their attacks was a bit hard, but it was manageable. With just a tiny sliver of health left, we launch the last diamond out of existence and off we go to Aquastar, the third level of the game. While basking in the fresh seawater essence and windy sea breeze, we must cope with the fact that we don't have a useful fireworks ability anymore. I temporarily use a standard rock ability to get past the fishies and goons. We then enter the Cave of Verticality, where we carefully platform our way up without floating of course. This level is a nice change of pace from the scorching desert and rocky terrain that was Rockstar, and seeing the flowing water and star-shaped cave flooring is relaxing. We then utilize the Needle ability to skewer our enemies with no mercy. I then combine the Cutter and Spark abilities to create my second favorite combo, the Electric Lifesaver. This combo is helpful because it helps me defeat enemies with ease and makes it easier for me to not accidentally float. We navigate across the calming rivers filled with not so calming enemies littering the road. Luckily for Kirby, we have a sweet two-bladed plasma sword which obliterates every fool who stands in our way. We make our way outside once more and go surfing on a wooden box with our friend Waddle Dee. This level was a bit sluggish due to the fact that the water current kept pushing us backwards, and not floating only delayed things more. These giant spike logs were pretty unsettling too, and the level of platforming has been ramped up by a large margin too. We then return to the Sandland but with water this time. These goons are just relaxing under the hot summer sun until Kirby wrecks all their fun. We continue to stroll in the water and hop on these collapsing logs, which could have forced me to start all over if I found the other side as it rises. We then enter this massive cave headfirst and make our way all the way back up, while avoiding dangerous spike logs downhill. This section will be a cinch if it weren't for the fact that, I can't fly. Next up, we make our way into a level entirely submerged in water. I didn't like this one as much because it was 99% swimming, and swimming in this game feels a bit wonky. Unfortunately, I lost a life and lost my lifesaver, but at least I could use enemies as weapons. We navigate through the underwater cave with strong currents. This is basically one straight path to the end, and honestly, I prefer it that way, as this level is kinda low tier. We face off against the Grey Shark who spits out spike boulders and other strange things. With the regular bomb ability, this boss fight was a bit too easy and had no trouble at all. Oh boy, what can I say about Neostar, the fourth level in the game? I have experienced multiple game overs, a ton of frustration, and even contemplated on giving up on this stupid challenge altogether. That's how bad it got. This level was the ultimate platforming test, with no floating. I cannot stress enough how relieved I was when I finally got past this world. The first level wasn't all too bad. There were a couple annoying enemies to deal with, and little traps I couldn't dodge. However, when I got to the vine swing area, this was when I realized that this challenge was not going to be fun. I had to carefully time my jump so that I could get on the vine without plunging to my doom. This was kinda nerve-wracking, but we made it through. However, I had to eat my own words at the very end of the level. Pure torture has been unleashed upon me, as I had to time my jumps precisely to get on the swinging logs, and even had to use the glider enemies to glide across the levels. But that didn't work because as soon as I get hit, I immediately fall and die. The logs where they collapse after being stepped on certainly did not help in any way. I raged so hard during this section and lost so many lives, as you can tell in the video recording. After finally passing that part, we are rewarded an invincible lollipop to ravage through crazy enemies in our way. After making it through, we enter the rocky mines and we ride in a minecart with our pal Waddle Dee. This would be absolutely terrifying to do in real life, I imagine. Good thing it's just a game. We gain control over Pink Hero and deal with the mess that is in front of us. Funny enough, the second level is not nearly as difficult as the first one, which kinda sounds backwards if you ask me. After rummaging about, we finally reunite with our favorite lightsaber and wreak havoc. We engage in a fight that felt super satisfying with the sword. Plus their water types, and my electric type sword is super effective. We scour through the dangerous crushing blocks of doom, and then move on to the rocky canyon. The beginning sections were absolutely no problem at all, but it increasingly got harder incrementally. With really tight jumps, I made it through the very tiny poles, which is anxiety-inducing, because I had to start all over if I make one little mistake. After crossing the gorge, Adeline wants us to make a pizza shape by carving the blocks in the next room, but I say no to that and move on. Now, this next section gave me a lot of trouble because these annoyingly placed Bronto birds forced me to jump with extremely precise timing to avoid falling with the collapsing platforms. After finally getting the swing of things, we hop on rocks carved to spell out our name and move on to the molten hot volcano. This is yet another torturous level that took me, you guessed it, many tries. The beginning section, as per usual, is not the hard part. We carefully navigate through the rocky sections and enemies until His Royal Highness assists us with his trusty hammer to break through the molten rock. After parting ways with the king, this section was difficult because of tight platforming and the very fact that I literally can't get back up from this very high pole, and I had to do the entire freaking thing again and again just because I fell on one. After learning my lesson, we move on to the next room, and the wall of lava is caving in on us, and we are forced to move. This section was scary because I had to do even more tight platforming, all while avoiding enemies and the giant wall of lava. We escape into the next room and find ourselves going upwards now with, let's all say it together now, more platform. This is very tricky as I kept falling and kept getting crushed, forcing me to do this level again and again. I even had to use the lava to boost myself upwards for distance. Finally, after everything we've been through, all of our toils and torture, we finally get to face off against the boss of Neostar. This boss was considered child's play compared to everything we've been through up to this point. Although there were parts where I was forced to take damage because I couldn't float up, we did make our way to my favorite world in the game, Shiverstar. We gaze upon the glorious field of snow with Christmas trees littered about. What better way is there to spend Christmas than firing up our fireworks and setting everyone on fire? That's the Christmas spirit. Shiverstar is like the exact opposite of the last world, both in difficulty and theming. It's funny how this world is technically supposed to be a lot harder than the last, but feels much more tolerable. We climb this giant waffle cone and then go sledding on a waterbed with Waddle Dee once again. Next up, we go soaring into the clouds, which makes things a tad harder because we can't fly. There were so many gaps in between the clouds, and the flying enemies made it awkward to cross. I had to use them to glide across again, but ended up falling into this deep hole. I finally made it past and was faced with shrieking clouds that expanded. This is a bit scary because I had to time my jumps and be very patient. And I also really didn't want to do all this again. Unfortunately, I had to eat my own words once again, as this next section is literally impossible to get across without my fireworks for distance. This means I had to go all the way back to Popstar to get it back, and then start the entire thing from scratch, and waste more time just because I can't get past this tiny gap. All because I can't fly. This challenge is very time consuming and frustrating, but this wasn't even the disappointing part. I'll tell you later. After going back, I was really careful not to break this single block with my fireworks. Next up, we visit the abandoned shopping mall, and this is significantly easier as there are no pits for me to fall in. I also like the shopping vibes it gives. It reminds me of Black Friday shopping. We visit each floor, which is filled with various decorations and colorful blocks. Overall, this level was a cinch. This is one of my favorite levels in the entire game. We traverse the underground factory with storage related stuff and boxes and all sorts of machinery. We descend deeper and deeper, all while enjoying this banging soundtrack. Thankfully, King Dedede arrives just in time to help us across the deadly room filled with giant robots with even bigger hammers. We once again part ways and find ourselves in a strange room filled with all sorts of freakish experiments inside giant test tubes. Who knows what's going on in this ominous factory and who's responsible for these monstrosities. Upon entering the mid-boss room, it is apparently obvious that once I fall to the bottom, it's instant game over for me. Thankfully, I had my fireworks ability, which just barely was enough to damage him bit by bit. This process was extremely long, and I was super relieved to finally move on already. This is sped up by like 400%, so you can imagine how long it took. We make our way to the deadly machine crushing machinery with malicious intent. There were many close calls, but we made it through. Until this happened. That's right, this little section right here. This is the section that ultimately killed our run. It is literally impossible to get through this little platform without floating. I tried numerous times to firework my way through, but it just wouldn't work. Is this the end? Is this really how it ends? After all my hard work, attempting to finish this game without floating, and experiencing frustration and deaths numerous times, I am very sorry to say that, no, it is impossible to finish this game without floating, unless there's a combo abilities that can help me bypass this giant gap. But I can't think of any at the moment. This is very anticlimactic, because I nearly made it to the end of the game and was able to overcome tight obstacles in some way or form, and narrowly dodged all sorts of bosses and baddies, but alas, it is not meant to be. If you watched all the way to the end of this video, please like and subscribe for more challenge runs like this. Kirby and I will really appreciate your support. Thank you for watching.